Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Hi, folks. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. This is part 2 of Tucker Carlson of Fox News' coverage of the January 6th video footage that was released through Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House's office. It was given to Tucker Carlson and Fox News to go through. I find it fascinating. Let's listen. Let's listen on. The more we see, the more we learn.
It was neither an insurrection nor deadly. Here it is.
January 6th, when an estimated 2,000 rioters breached the Capitol building, causing the deaths of 5 police officers.
Certain dates echo throughout history. December 7th, 1941. September 11th, 2001. And January 6th.
The mob beat officers with anything they had on them. Hockey stick, a flagpole, a fire extinguisher. Police officers died.
Donald Trump supporters who, of course, rioted and killed police officers.
By the evening of January 6th, the Democratic Party and its publicists in the national news media had settled on a description of what had happened that day. They distilled an enormous number of highly complex events that even now we don't fully understand, into a single emotionally laden political slogan, which they've repeated for years with remarkable discipline.
Remarkable discipline. I will give him that. We'll say President Trump, to a certain extent, but mostly his supporters, fell right into the net that the Democrats set up. They set him up. It's as simple as that. And I will give the Democrats credit. They played this one beautifully as far as politics goes. Now, as far as justice goes, no. But as far as politics, it was brilliant on their part. I have to give it to them. As dirty as it was extremely well played. And I'm a Trump supporter, and I say that.
January 6th, they said, was a deadly insurrection.
There was a deadly insurrection that the right wing is trying to cover up.
He incited a deadly insurrection.
Incited a deadly insurrection.
The violent, deadly insurrection on the Capitol 9 months ago, it was about white supremacy, in my view.
A deadly
white supremacy, in my view. But the part that really is the police officers, 5 that died. That is an outright lie. That's not even a shading of the truth. The Capitol police officer that died, I feel badly for. I believe it was the next day or the day after. He had an aneurysm or a stroke and he passed away. And you're going to see footage of this police officer walking around. There was nothing wrong with him. The New York Times report he was hit with a fire extinguisher. But a few weeks and months later, the New York Times retracted that story, but the damage was already done. Let's listen on.
Insurrection. Everything about that phrase is a lie. Very little about January 6th was organized or violent. Surveillance video from inside the Capitol shows mostly peaceful chaos. But the slogan worked. The term deadly carries enormous emotional power, which is why they used it. To prove the insurrection was deadly, propagandists pointed to the death of an officer called Brian Sicknick. The mob killed Officer Brian Sicknick. That's what they said. It was their single most powerful indictment of the January 6th protesters and of Donald Trump and of Republican voters nationally. They repeated that claim for years. They are still repeating it.
And that is simply a lie. I feel badly for the officer himself and his family, but that is a lie.
First, they told the country that Officer Sicknick was murdered with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
Lie.
That story came from the New York Times, which is effectively the assignment editor for most of the rest of American media. It was a lie, untrue in any way. But only after that lie had hardened into conventional wisdom did the newspaper bother to retract it.
The New York Times has quietly retracted its story about the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
The damage had been done. Brian Sicknick, himself a Trump voter, had been transformed without his consent into a political martyr of the left.
I'm surprised they show him here as Cremains in the rotunda, which was absolutely ridiculous. Sorry that it was. Talk about political theater, but they played it beautifully. I'm frankly surprised that Sicknick's wife and or family allowed this because they knew it wasn't true. I wonder what they got for it in exchange.
His memory was shamelessly exploited by the incoming Biden administration. In February of 2021, Sicknick's body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, where a parade of unscrupulous politicians made use of it. Here's Joe Biden.
Breaking down the doors, trying to overturn an outcome of election, and killing several police officers in the meantime.
But Brian Sicknick should not be reduced to a prop for the political ambitions of the Democratic Party. He was a human being. The facts of his life matter, including how he died. To this day, media accounts describe Sicknick as someone who was, quote, slain on January 6th. The video we reviewed proves that is a lie. Here is surveillance footage of...
Now you're going to see surveillance footage now of Officer Sicknick. Like I said, I feel badly that he passed away. I believe it was an aneurysm or a stroke the next day or the day after. Just bad luck on his part. Had nothing, literally nothing to do with what happened on January 6th. He wasn't accosted. He wasn't hit with a fire extinguisher. Those are all lies. But if you notice what he said about the New York Times, that they printed a retraction much later, and probably on page 62, on the bottom of the page, or nobody could see it. That way they're covered legally. It's disgusting. It was a total lie. 5 officers did not die. The only person that died on January 6th at the hands of the Capitol Police was a young veteran of the Air Force. It's disgusting.
Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury.
Yeah, he puts a sign behind one of the statues. He's got a helmet on. He looks fine to me. It was a lie. Pretty good for a dead man, huh?
Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape...
See him waving people in? I'm not putting the guy down. They were instructed to do that. From who? Maybe we'll never find out. My gut tells me it was the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, but then again, I'm biased.
Overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th. And it was indeed a lie. The January 6th committee knew perfectly well that Brian Sicknick was walking normally through the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by Trump supporters. And they know that because they saw this tape. We can be sure because the footage contains an electronic bookmark that is still archived in the Capitol's computer system. That means that investigators working for the Democratic Party reviewed this tape.
Now, isn't that interesting? A bookmark shows that the committee looked at this video and said nothing. Is not telling the whole truth the same as lying? You bet it is.
They saw it, but they refused to release the tape to the public. Why? Because this tape would shatter the fraud they were perpetrating on the country. Because hiding the truth served their political interest. They lied about the police officer they claimed to revere. If they were willing to do that, then their dishonesty knew no limits. And as you'll see in a moment, their dishonesty did know no limits. New surveillance video in just a minute, including new reporting on Ray Epps and what he was doing there and what he told investigators he was doing there and how it's contradicted by the video evidence. But first, to assess what we just saw, Charlie Hurt of the Washington Times joins us now. Charlie, thanks so much for coming on. Do that, to lie about a man's death like that for political advantage, and this tape proves that's exactly what they did.
No, these people are truly sick. You think you know how sick they are, and then you see something like this, and you realize that there is truly nothing, no body, no event, nothing that they won't exploit. And as Joe Biden said, exactly. Oh no, this is also about white supremacy, and nobody comported themselves worse than the press did on this day, and of course in the years afterwards. And the best example of it is to look at the degree to which so many people in the press are so upset that you got the tapes and that you're going to release the tapes. I've never heard of this. I've never, in all of my life, I've never known a press that didn't want information to be released. That's what we have been.
Isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? When I was young, I wanted to be a reporter. I really did. I was very much interested. I never ended up doing it. But I really wanted to be a reporter, a person that reported the news, things that happened locally, statewide, nationally. I've never heard of the press say, give us less evidence, give us less footage, give us less interviews, give us less statements. It's an amazing thing. That just set off alarm bells right there. Charlie's right.
Fighting for since the invention of the printing press. And now we have all these people, they're so committed to sort of the big lie that the government tells that they'll do anything, including denigrating the name of a good police officer and trying to hide the truth in order to sort of prop up this propaganda. The deadly insurrection is one of them. The other one that they love to talk about is the armed insurrectionists. And I remember at the time asking reporters at the time, why do you keep calling these people armed insurrectionists when there's no evidence that anybody used any arms against it? And they said, well, they had flagpoles. So it's because people were walking around with American flags that made them armed insurrectionists.
I should say for our viewers who don't know, you've been in journalism all your life. Your father was a journalist. You grew up in this business. And I agree with you. It's shocking to see how thoroughly it's been perverted into what it is now.
To support the government.
Right. Active defense of the people in charge. It's shocking. Charlie Hurt, appreciate it. Thank you.
Great to see you.
So there's one takeaway from all of the footage that we went through, thousands of hours over the past 3 weeks, is that the January 6th committee lied, that the press bought and repeated their lies, and that those lies were used to strip the civil liberties, in some cases the freedoms, of voters across the country.
Now, this is the end of part 2. I'm almost speechless, and I've seen this 2 or 3 times already to review it before I did the recording. The Patriot Act was the beginning, those of you that are old enough to remember. And I knew that was a mistake. I was a city councilman at the time. I was a city councilman from 2000 to 2007 in upstate New York. And I remember when it passed, secret FISA courts, warrants that nobody could see, evidence to bring about a warrant with judges with no names, no faces. That is just terrible stuff. And now we're at the next step. I do have to say, though, as evil as it is, politically, the Democrats played this one beautifully. I'm not praising them at all. I'm just telling you what the reality is. They played this beautifully. Now, will this house of cards come crashing down on them? Will it? Will people see through what's going on after seeing these videos and some of the commentary? I don't know. My gut is 42% will believe it was actually worse after they saw the videos. But I will say this, though. All of the defense attorneys, or all the people that have been jailed for 2 years, not charged, and those that pled guilty are going to want to see these videos. They want to go back and pull those guilty pleas out and say, we're going to go to trial now. Because there's been 2 or 3 of the so-called insurrectionists that have gone to trial, and they were found not guilty. It's amazing. All of the people that were charged, not one person, to my knowledge, has been charged with insurrection. And yet, that's what they call it. Stay tuned for the next few parts. This is going to be a long series, and I think it's worth covering. And until next time, goodbye, and good luck, and God bless America.